Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching GD India Global. We'll get you the top stories from India and the region. I'm Amritpal Singh. And for the news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague Caroline Malone from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us, Caroline.
Good morning, Amrit. It's 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and 4 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, US Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris insists her core values remain unchanged in her first interview since becoming the Democratic nominee. But first, the headlines.
European Union defense ministers meet in Brussels to boost the bloc's support for Ukraine in the conflict with Russia. Ukraine appeals to EU to contribute to an air defense shield over its western regions. In her first major interview, Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris vows tougher approach on illegal immigration, supports weapons for Israel. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi lays the foundation stone of the Vadhavan port project in Maharashtra, says development on India's coast has gained unprecedented pace in the last decade. India opens its medal tally with 4 medals in the Paris Paralympics, gets gold and a bronze in the women's shooting 10-meter air rifle event, a silver medal in the men's 10-meter air pistol event. Preeti Pal wins bronze in a track event. Prime Minister Modi congratulates the winners. Pakistan's military has launched an intelligence-based operation in southwestern Balochistan province in response to attacks by insurgents that killed over 50 people this week. In a statement, the Pakistani army said that 5 insurgents were killed and 3 others injured in 3 operations it had launched in the province. The Baloch Liberation Army had claimed responsibility for the attacks on Pakistani security installations and also killing some civilians. Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has said that the attacks were aimed at hurting the China-Pakistan economic corridor. The European Union's defense ministers are meeting in Brussels to discuss boosting the bloc's support for Ukraine and the disputed Venezuelan elections. The defense ministers are also expected to look into Europe's defense more generally in the face of what they perceive to be a growing Russian threat. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov said that he had called on EU allies to contribute to an air defense shield over Ukraine's western regions. A Russian attack on a playground in Ukraine's northeastern city of Kharkiv killed 4 children and a child and injured at least 28 on Friday. In another incident, 3 were killed and at least 11 were injured in an overnight airstrike on a factory which was conducted by Russian forces in the city of Sumy in northeastern Ukraine. Smoke caused by fire in the region forced residents to stay indoors. The attack is said to have targeted civilian infrastructure. And Ukraine on Friday claimed that its forces has 2 kilometers into Russia's western Kursk region in the past 24 hours. In a meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's top army commander said that its army had taken control of a 5 square kilometer territory of Russia. And ED India's Alex Carrier joins us from Brussels. Alex, the Ukrainian defense minister has made a pitch to his EU allies to contribute to an air defense shield over western regions of the country against possibly to shield the country against last night's Sumy sort of attack. What was the general view in that room in Brussels?
Well, that will be targeting specifically Poland. That has been a big question between Ukraine and Poland for a couple of weeks now, whether or not the Polish military should be shooting down Russian missiles, Russian drones, flying into and over and through its airspace to then target infrastructure in Ukraine. That is a big question for the Polish government. So far, it is a question for the European Union. It is also a question for the NATO alliance, because the reaction in the room, as you are asking for it, is one of concern that if they are shooting down Russian assets over Poland, that in some way involves Poland and involves the NATO alliance in the war. And of course, retaliation from Russia against Poland could then drag the entire NATO alliance of 31 countries into this war. So that is the concern. The European Union, Poland and others trying not to escalate this war any further, trying to resist escalation efforts by the Russians, and trying as much as they can to do that whilst supporting Ukraine. At the moment, we understand there is a level of skepticism from the NATO alliance, from the European Union, about shooting down Russian assets, but that won't stop the Ukrainians from asking its allies to at least consider shooting down Russian missiles in their airspace.
All right, we'll leave it there. Alex Carrier, thank you very much for joining us and giving us that update. In her first major interview after being chosen as the Democrats' presidential nominee, Kamala Harris says that Americans are ready to turn the page on Donald Trump. Caroline Malone is in Washington, D.C. to give us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. So, Caroline, Kamala tries to strike quite a centrist position, saying, well, I'll put a stop on illegal immigration, but my liberal values persist.
Thanks, Amrit. Well, yes, the Vice President Kamala Harris is very much in campaign mode now, sitting for her first major interview on Thursday night after being chosen as the Democratic nominee. Harris said that her core values remain unchanged despite shifts in some policy positions. Harris took in-depth questions on her policy evolution, though, on key issues like fracking, and she defended her record on immigration and the Biden administration's handling of the economy. Harris signalled her support for Israel, but pointed out that far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed.
We have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8 to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution, where Israel is secure and in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
Well, as the presidential campaign intensifies, two rivals are talking about new issues to get voters to tilt in their favour. The Republican candidate, Donald Trump, on Wednesday promised free IVF treatment that might help single mothers. Well, the ex-president added that under a second Trump term, new parents would be able to deduct major newborn expenses from their tax bills.
I'm announcing today in a major statement that under the Trump administration, your government will pay for, or your insurance company will be mandated to pay for, all costs associated with IVF treatment, fertilization for women, IVF treatment. Because we want more babies, to put it very nicely.
Well, let's go now to DD India's Mitch McCann, who joins us live from New York. Thanks for joining us, Mitch. So let's start with the interview. What were the highlights of what Harris and Walz talked about?
Yeah, good morning, Caroline. This was a real opportunity for an interviewer to drill down into Kamala Harris's policies and campaigns. Of course, she has faced plenty of criticism from Republicans and, of course, Donald Trump in recent weeks for not sitting down to do a proper TV interview with someone until now. So she's decided to do that with CNN in Savannah, Georgia yesterday alongside her vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. And one of the first questions that was asked of Kamala Harris is what she would do on day one of her administration if she wins the White House later this year, only 66 days from now. Now, she didn't give any specifics in terms of key executive actions or law changes she would like to make, but she did talk about wanting to grow the economy generally. Now, one of the key themes or key narratives of the interview with Harris was her policy changes over a number of years. Now, one of the first things she was asked about was fracking, which of course is the process of drawing oil and gas from the earth. In 2019, she said she wanted to ban fracking when she first ran for president herself. That policy changed in 2020. And she was also asked about comments in 2019 also, where she said she wanted to decriminalise illegal border crossings, specifically targeting the southern border of the United States. That policy has changed, and she said last night that there needs to be consequences for doing that. Now, Harris didn't specifically talk about why those policies had changed, but she talked about that her values hadn't changed. Now, when it came to the war in Gaza, another important issue for Democratic voters, particularly in the battleground state of Michigan, Kamala Harris really reiterated the administration's position here. She said what we've heard from Joe Biden as well, that Israel has the right to defend itself, but too many innocent civilians have been dying in Gaza. And when asked by the interviewer whether or not she would withhold weapons from Israel, she said she wouldn't, but really talked about the importance of a ceasefire agreement being reached in the coming weeks. Now, there were other topics discussed as well. Kamala Harris said that she would invite a Republican into her cabinet if she was elected president. She talked about wanting a diversity of opinions. When it came to the vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, he really didn't speak too much over that 27-minute interview, but he was asked about one thing, comments he made in 2018, where he compared a weapon to one that he said he had taken into war, but it turned out, of course, that he has not served in a combat zone overseas. But he said, quote, that he added that his grammar is not always correct. But overall, the interview delved into some policy positions, but as it was described on National Public Radio this morning, Caroline, it wasn't earth-shattering.
So, Mitch, we've got about just over 2 months to go until this election. How is the race going? What are the polls showing us about these two candidates?
Yeah, we are counting down, getting closer and closer to that November date. It seems as if there are polls every single day that are coming out, Caroline. And at the moment, most of them are showing that nationally, Kamala Harris has a slight lead, a couple of percentage points over Donald Trump. And the same can be said for most battleground states. One of the newest polls that came out on Thursday afternoon was from Bloomberg, and it showed that Kamala Harris was leading in all swing states apart from Arizona, where it was tied, and her biggest lead was 8 points in Wisconsin. But most of these battleground state polls are still within the margin of error. So it's important to note that the race is extremely close right now.
Very interesting. Thanks, Mitch. That was Mitch McCann reporting live from New York. Well, the Israeli military says its forces have killed Wassam Hazem, the head of Hamas for the West Bank region on Friday. 2 other Hamas fighters were killed, along with their commander, in the aerial attack. Weapons were found, including M16 rifles, handguns and grenades in a vehicle. Hazem was involved in carrying out and directing shooting and bombing attacks in the West Bank region. Moscow has denied any deals have been made between President Vladimir Putin and Telegram CEO Pavel Durov. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Putin's never met Durov. The statement comes in the wake of a French judge initiating a formal investigation into the Telegram CEO for suspected complicity in running an online platform that allows illicit transactions, child abuse images, drug trafficking and fraud. Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Back to you in the studio, Amrit.
Thank you, Caroline, for that. Have a good day. And still to come on DD India Global, the United Nations mulls launching a polio vaccination drive in Gaza as the cases there rise. But for that, a ceasefire needs to take place, at least a temporary ceasefire, for which hectic diplomatic efforts are indeed on. Baby girl cast Nicole Kidman and Antonio Banderas arrived together at the International Venice Film Festival.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India Global. I'm Amritpal Singh. India's Prime Minister laid the foundation stone of the Vadhavan port in the Palghar district of western state of Maharashtra on Friday. The total cost of the project is around 76,000 crore rupees, and the port is one of India's largest deep water ports. It aims to establish a world-class maritime gateway that will provide direct connectivity to international shipping routes, reducing transit time and costs. The Vadhavan Port project incorporates sustainable development practices with a focus on minimizing environmental impact and adhering to stringent ecological standards. Once operational, the port will enhance India's maritime connectivity and further strengthen its position as a global trade hub.
2014 में आप सबने हमें दिल्ली में सेवा करने का मौका दिया। 2016 में जब हमारे साथी देवेंद्र जी की सरकार आई, तब इस पर उन्होंने गंभीरता से काम शुरू करवाया। 2020 में यहां पोर्ट बनाने का फैसला भी कर लिया गया, लेकिन उसके बाद सरकार बदल गई और 2.5 साल तक फिर यहां कोई काम नहीं हुआ। आप मुझे बताइए, अकेले इस प्रोजेक्ट से यहां कई लाख करोड़ रुपए के निवेश का अनुमान है। यहां करीब 12 लाख रोजगार के अवसर पैदा होंगे।
And Prime Minister Modi hailed the country's growth in the fintech sector while addressing the Global Fintech Fest in Mumbai. Lauding the fintech revolution, the Prime Minister said that Indian fintech startups have seen 500% growth in the last 10 years. Prime Minister called for a global framework for ethical use of AI and announced a fund of 1 lakh crore Indian rupees for research and development.
हमने देश में रिसर्च और इनोवेशन को बढ़ावा देने के लिए 1 लाख करोड़ रुपए का फंड बनाने की घोषणा की है। हमने डेटा प्रोटेक्शन कानून बनाया है। मेरी हमारे रेगुलेटर से भी कुछ अपेक्षाएं हैं। हमें साइबर फ्रॉड को रोकने के लिए और डिजिटल लिटरेसी के लिए और बड़े कदम उठाने होंगे। साइबर फ्रॉड स्टार्टअप्स की, फिनटेक्स की ग्रोथ में रुकावट न बने, ये ध्यान रखना भी उतना ही जरूरी है।
And Prime Minister Modi will be visiting Brunei on the 3rd and 4th of next month. This will be the first ever bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister. Prime Minister Modi will thereafter travel to Singapore on the 4th and 5th of September. This was stated by India's External Affairs Ministry spokesperson in New Delhi today.
Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, at the invitation of His Majesty Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah, is scheduled to visit Brunei Darussalam during 3rd and 4th September 2024. This will be the first ever bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Brunei. The visit coincides with 40th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic ties between India and Brunei. From Brunei, the Prime Minister will thereafter visit Singapore on 4th and 5th September 2024 at the invitation of Prime Minister His Excellency Mr. Lawrence Wong of Singapore.
Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. The United Nations will launch a polio vaccination drive in Gaza, which will be possible only after a temporary ceasefire in Palestine. The WHO aims to vaccinate at least 90% of the children in Gaza Strip. The polio drive has been organized after a child got paralyzed by type 2 polio virus. On the second day of his visit to Serbia, French President Emmanuel Macron held a joint press conference with Serbian President Alexander Vučić in capital Belgrade. A landmark agreement was signed by Serbia for purchase of 12 new Rafale fighter jets worth $2.99 billion from France. At least 4 people have died and 99 injured in Typhoon Shanshan in Japan. Warnings for flooding and landslides were issued due to torrential rain on Friday. It halted travel services and shutting production at major factories. Around 250,000 households were without power in the southwestern region of Kyushu. On to sports news now. Some good news for India. India opened their medal tally at the Paris Paralympics in style by winning 2 medals in shooting. Avni Lakhera won gold medal while Mona Agarwal won a bronze medal in the final of the 10-meter air rifle standing SH1. Avni Lakhera not only defended her gold medal in the event that she had won at Tokyo, she also bettered her Paralympics record of 249.6 that she had set 3 years ago with 249.7. And India's Priti Pal created history at Paris Paralympics by becoming the first Paralympian to win a medal in a track event. Priti won bronze medal in the women's 100 meters T35 finals. Priti finished with a time of 14.21. With this, she becomes the first Paralympian medalist for India in the track event in the history of Paralympics. This time, 14.21 is also Priti's personal best. And India's Manish Narwal won a silver medal in P1 men's 10-meter air pistol SH1 final at the Paralympics on Friday. Narwal finished at second place with a score of 234.9 in Tokyo Paralympics. Manish had won the gold in the mixed SH1 50 meters pistol. And to talk more about that, I'm joined by my colleague Tapas Bhattacharya, who joins us from the newsroom. Tapas, while Avni created history by becoming the second medal winner, she defended her Tokyo medal here at Paris again. But Priti also created history by becoming the first sprinter to get a medal in Paralympics for India.
Absolutely. In fact, Amrit, I'm glad that you brought up both these athletes' names for the simple reason Avni became the only Indian athlete to, in fact, defend her gold medal. No, other athlete shooter has so far done that. We talk about Avina Bindra, we talk about Neeraj Chopra, but they have won gold, but they couldn't defend it. Here, Avni not just won the gold medal in the last edition. This time also she defended it, and that too, with a gold. So huge, a round of applause for our girl who at the age of 12 was paralyzed after met with an accident, and she was bedridden. She was paralyzed from waist down, and from then onwards, the way she has come out and the way she has competed, it's a testament to human sacrifice, emotions, and the way they actually can triumph all the adversity. You mentioned Preeti. I really wanted to tell you something. 6 days after her birth, she was plastered. Her legs were plastered, and it stayed for many days. And from the age of 7, she was struggling, and it was difficult. I mean, a lot of people thought she might not even succeed, so might not survive, from such a young age. Right from her birth, it was a struggle to survive. And from there, to conquer the world, it's something that nobody would have thought about. At the age of 16, 17, she saw for the first time a Paralympic tournament, Paralympic Games. And Devendra Jadeja, who's currently the president of the Paralympic Committee of India, is an inspiration to many of these athletes who himself has won multiple medals. And Preeti saw that, and she worked really hard with her coach, and in Delhi's Jailen Stadium, Institute size Jailen Stadium, these athletes worked day and night. And that's one reason why you saw on the very first day 4 medals coming out. And remember, the last time India won 19 medals, 5 gold. We expect the medal count to go up manifold. We also believe that India will script history in this particular edition of Paris Paralympic Games. And we will see many more such stories of Preeti as well as Avni to come and be an inspiration for all of us.
Absolutely. They are indeed our heroes. They are our inspiration. Very touching story you told us about Preeti. The nation indeed is so proud of them. Thank you, Tapas, for joining us for the moment. Well, the 81st International Venice Film Festival enters its 3rd day on Friday, where Baby Girl cast Nicole Kidman and Antonio Banderas, along with the crew, posed together at the film festival's photo wall. The cast arrived for the world premiere of their movie at the film festival. Well, that's it then in this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code that you see on your screens right now to download. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Amrit Pal Singh from my entire team here in Delhi. Thank you for watching DD India Global.